But with the trade deadline around the corner and the Four Nations tournament well underway, this is the best time to probably talk about the Sharks' potential trades that they might be looking at and guys that might be shipped out before the end of the deadline. So, without further ado, this is episode 16 of the Teal Teardown Hockey Podcast, finally in video form. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 16 of the Teal Teardown Hockey Podcast, the first podcast I've done on video. So if you're watching on YouTube, this is the first time you're actually going to be seeing some stuff that I got going on. So bear with me, I'm still trying to figure out how I can make this thing work. If you're listening on Spotify, nothing really changes. You're going to be hearing everything the same way. But either way, I appreciate you being here wherever you are and whatever you're listening from. I just appreciate you here listening today or watching. So today we're going to be talking about the Four Nations tournament a little bit, but mostly it's a trade deadline episode. So there are obviously guys that the Sharks have been into looking at. There's some potential rumors that the Sharks should be looking at, especially they should be beefing up their defense. And we can tell that they really are limited in that situation. There are guys in the future that may be coming up, but even during rebuild, you still need to have some solid vets that kind of fit those little molds and help the young guys grow and kind of cushion them from having to get the big minutes. And also Sharks just need size. We see they're getting bullied around all the time, so there are some potential guys that Sharks could be looking at in terms of that. We're going to get into that as well. There are also some guys that the Sharks are going to be shipping out because they are UFAs and the Sharks should be looking for futures, potential draft picks and things like that. Maybe even using these guys to trade to get these potential defensemen, other guys that the Sharks are looking to acquire for the future. So without further ado, let's get started here. So the Four Nations tournament is well underway. We're about, as this point, there's been two different days here. There's one game left before the gold medal game. The U.S. is guaranteed to be in there already. They have 6 points. Canada right now is going to be playing Finland. So by the time you see this, it's probably already going to be over. But Canada has to basically win, get 3 points if they want to guarantee themselves a spot. If they win in overtime, then the U.S. has to at least get a point against Sweden to eliminate them, basically. So Finland and Canada are basically do or die game. Finland has a chance as well. If they win in regulation and Canada loses, they're probably in the final as well. They'll be looking at also Sweden having to lose a point. But so far, right now, it's looking like it could be another rematch between Canada and America, and who wouldn't want to see that? After what we saw on Saturday, that was just a freaking bloodbath. The first 3 minutes of the game, you had 3 fights. Actually, it was the first 9 seconds of the game, there were 3 fights. And just everyone was ready to go. Whether the politics aside, you want to take it from there, and also just the 8-year wait of this two rivals going at it. The U.S. always felt like that little brother, especially the last 15 years, where they're just pretty good, but they just weren't that next level good enough to take care of Canada. Canada was always been stacked, especially with goaltending. And this year, you could probably say they're definitely heavily top-loaded with forwards, but their defense is lacking, especially with some of the injuries that came through. And their goaltending is you could argue that they didn't even pick their best goaltenders. I mean, Logan Thompson's having a heck of a season for Washington. Blackwood is actually doing very well for Colorado. He's shown that he's a standout goalie once he actually has a good team in front of him. And obviously, there's the third person, which would have been... why am I drawing a blank on the third guy there? Definitely not Montembeault. He shouldn't be on there. But either way, so those two guys should be definitely on the list. Binnington, you could say he's been pretty okay. The thing is, he's led in some bad goals, and he has really bad starts in this tournament so far. So the thing is about Binnington is that he's made those big saves, but he's also led in some bad ones. I just don't think he's like a Canada world goalie. I think that Aiden Hill should probably get a start today with Finland. We'll see who gets picked in there. Montembeault is kind of just happy to be there, obviously. But for Canada, the thing is that they have that top-loaded talent. You got McDavid, you got McKinnon, all those guys, but even they haven't really been... McDavid's been pretty good, but he's been getting bullied around by America, and Crosby, surprisingly, had a really bad game against the U.S. After a really great game against Sweden, he's been kind of underwhelming. Maybe he's showing his age, I don't know. But that game was incredible. In terms of the U.S., they are completely stacked from top to bottom. They're the type of team that they're kind of showing that they're the up and coming future all world team basically. They have from Austin Matthews to Jack Eichel, Jack Hughes, even Quinn Hughes didn't get to make it this tournament, and this defense is still incredibly stacked. So the U.S. is probably looking at the future being the best team, at least for the 2026 Olympics and maybe the next World Cup of Hockey, which also, by the way, has been announced by the NHL. So now what sounds like it's going to happen is every 2 years we're going to get some all-world hockey. There's going to be the Olympics, and then 2 years later there's going to be a World Cup of Hockey, at least up until 2032. So that's good news. We're going to get more of this kind of stuff where it's just best on best, and we've really been lacking it. I mean, the World Cup of Hockey, the Four Nations tournament is not bad, but like, you know, it's still not quite like the Olympic level of hockey. Like I think the reason that we just missed it for so long, for 8 years, that this is kind of a special thing. But when we actually compare it to the Olympics, when it's really the actual stakes are a lot higher and there's more countries, that's when we're really going to actually get, I think, better hockey and just more excitement overall. But this is still like, you know, it's still a nice thing to have, replacing the All-Star game, which has always been kind of a joke the last 10, 15 years, maybe even longer, where the guys just don't even care. They're just happy to kind of like play around, and it's just kind of it's more for the kids, really. So it's not bad. But so this is just the standings right now, as I was just talking before. If Canada gets 3 points today against Finland, they're automatically in. But if it goes to overtime or any way and Canada still wins and gets this to 2 points, Sweden can steal from them if they beat America in regulation. So there's potential there, but the U.S., honestly, they're so stacked. I can't see them losing another game. I can't see them, honestly, even losing the gold medal game. If it's a rematch against Canada, Canada has to be prepared. They're not built the way the U.S. is built. And this is actually something that was criticized from the U.S. from past tournaments, where they would take the guys that are more like the bullies than they were like the actual like stars. They were like Phil Kessel was sitting at home that one time during the last World Cup of Hockey, and I remember he had that little tweet when the U.S. was losing saying like, oh, there should be something I should be doing right now. I wonder what, when he was tweeting at home. So I think that the U.S. is still built the same way. They're bullies. Obviously, you have the Tkachuk brothers, but they're all loaded with talent. Like, these guys who are also bullies are also just really, really sick and talented. And I just don't think Canada has those kinds of guys that are skilled but also can stand up for themselves. Like, McDavid was getting drilled. Crosby was holding his own better. He was actually like checking back, but he was just, he's an old guy. What do you expect at his age? Like, he shouldn't be the one who should be the only one doing that. You know what I mean? I just think that Canada, they probably won't hold up to the U.S. unless they start standing up for themselves in the final. But that's still potential. Might not even happen. Like, Finland could somehow surprise. They have been a really good team. They played like a whole unit. There's not like really, of all the stars, they're probably the least star-studded. They have the high-end Barkovs. They have Aho. But then their defense is really lacking, basically, and their goaltending is pretty decent. Lankinen has been pretty good. Saros was okay in his first game. But when they all play as a unit, they can surprise. So Canada should not be asleep on this game. And I think both teams are really going to bring it for this one. They both want to show that they're, the best, and they want to make it to the finals. So it's going to be a very competitive game today at 1 p.m. Eastern, and I guess it'd be 10 a.m. Pacific. So that's going to be a good one. And tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, it'll be Sweden, USA. That's going to be another good one, I think. Sweden hasn't really had a great tournament. Surprisingly, we think that Finland would be, because of less star-studded, that they would be like last place, but Sweden honestly has not been able to just score goals. They've had trouble with that. Pedersen's getting a little bit of flack for the fact that he's not really scoring or doing anything. Nylander's been amazing. I gotta say, he's been incredible. He's been really leading the way. You can really see, like, he's got captain material in him. He's got the confidence. He's telling everyone what to do. You see, there's like, he was mic'd up on the ice, just like trying to, tell everyone what to do, where to go, and everything like that. So he's really, really good. They have stacked defense, so I'm surprised that they're actually in this situation. But in a short tournament like this, what do you expect? Like, each game is important. If you're not on it for your game, then you're gonna suffer for it. And this is the kind of thing. I mean, if it was like a bigger, longer tournament, Sweden might actually be able to have time to make up for it. But right now, they're just it's nothing good there. So I just want to show off the top scorers. Again, it's only been 2 games for everybody. There's not really much you could show that, like, you can't really say that anyone stood out. Gensel's having a hell of a tournament. He's got 3 goals already. Werenski's got 4 assists. Matthew Tkachuk is actually having a great tournament too. He's actually a maybe for tonight's game against Sweden. So we'll see what happened. He did get a little. He was hunching or limping again in the Canada game, and he didn't end up coming back out. So we'll have to see what happens with that. Matthew Tkachuk is another guy that you really would want to have on your team, but the U.S. is already guaranteed to go to the finals, so really they don't have to worry too much about this. They could really, if they want to, screw over Canada and let the Sweden kind of beat them in regulation, just not have to worry about them. But knowing the U.S., they would love to have a rematch and just show them what they're made of. And Canada is just another, that team that big brother syndrome that they really want to beat in terms of hockey. So I would be surprised if the U.S. isn't going to try. But I think Tkachuk is probably going to stay out for this game just because why risk getting injured for this and going back to the Panthers when you want to get another cup run? So he's probably going to sit out for this one, so we'll have to see. But 3 points for him. Crosby got 3 points, all assists from that first game, which was actually incredible. He was completely held scoreless against the U.S. The U.S. was just so dominant in that game. Like, after the first period, it felt like it could have been either way. But after that, U.S. just completely shut down the Canadians. It was just an unbelievable game regardless. So I got to give credit to the U.S. for that one. But yeah, so this is pretty much the scoring here. Nothing crazy. We'll see if anyone goes in a blowout today. I think that's going to be a defensive matchup with Finland and Canada. They're both going to be really holding on tight to try and win the game. And I think the U.S. and Sweden, it's a crapshoot. Maybe the U.S. could still keep going on a tear offensively. We'll have to see. But that is it for the Four Nations tournament. I'm really excited to see what's going to happen on Thursday. The gold medal game is going to be really exciting. The Canada-Finland game is going to be exciting for sure. I don't know about Canada, America and Sweden. We'll have to see. But I'm mostly excited for Canada and Finland. And that gold medal game is going to be pretty epic considering. Another thing I kind of made, considering we're talking about the Four Nations, I have an all-world team. So I only looked at the World Cup of Hockey players that played for the Sharks and were on the World Cup of Hockey rosters. So this is kind of limited. It was kind of just a little fun thing I did. I posted it on Instagram if you wanted to see that. It's Teal Teardown Hockey if you want to check my Instagram. I usually post like little things like this, or before the game I have like keys to the game and things like that. But anyway, so this is my second all-world team. Pretty stacked. It's a lot of the historical Sharks from back in the early 2000s, except for Logan Couture. He played for the World Cup of Hockey in 2016. But yeah, this is just starting with Igor Larionov, the professor, they call him. This is before he actually joined the Detroit Red Wings and won his 2 cups with them. He's a very smart player. Obviously during this time, his best was behind him when he played for Russia and during the Iron Curtain Soviet Union days when he wasn't really allowed to play in the NHL. Those were really his best times that we never got to see. But because he's such an intelligent player, he still was very, very effective in his older ages in the NHL. He was a great Shark, a good guy to kind of like lead the young kids. Especially there's a lot of Russians in there like Ozelinch that he could he helped them kind of get better and grow. But yeah, he definitely deserves to be on here. He played in the 1996 World Cup of Hockey, if you're curious. And Logan Couture, obviously what's more to say about him? Turned captain, but fortunately he's injured. Super talented guy. And just one of those guys that just unbelievably incredible. He played for the 2016 World Cup of Hockey when Sharks were really stacked and they always seemed to have a lot of Canadians on this Team Canada team. Nothing much more to say except he was a solid second line center type of a guy. All around center, plays 200-foot game. Great in the faceoffs, just a really good player. And obviously we'll never forget the Vegas overtime game, or the Vegas playoff game, Game 7. He was a big part of that, just that confidence going in. That's one when they're coming back, and that mojo that he had. So incredible player. Another one, Marco Sturm. Now he was very young when he left for the Sharks. My biggest favorite thing about him was that he was the piece that got us Joe Thornton. But he was another great player for the Sharks. I think it was around the time he broke his leg in 2003, so just before that, a few years before the tournament. But he always had this really, really great skill. He just never really panned out for the Sharks that what his potential was. He was always ended up being an okay player, but he was a solid Shark. I think his best years were as a Shark. But yeah, so he was another guy. He's the right winger I would put in the all-world team. And in terms of defense, Christian Ehrhoff. Now he's a guy that his potential was always never reached it for the Sharks. He went to Vancouver, but just before then he started to show his offensive side. And so the Sharks developed him very, very well. But this would have been the 2004 World Cup of Hockey. And he was obviously picked for Germany. Solid guy, nothing too crazy for the Sharks. He obviously was better for Vancouver, but he deserves to be on this list. And finally, Scott Hannon. So he was actually just before Vlasic, before the defensive defenseman, or even Braun, we had Scott Hannon. He was a great defensive defenseman. 2004 World Cup of Hockey, he was invited to play for Team Canada. Oh, he was just awesome. He was one of those guys you always depended on. He was always there in those situations, the penalty kill. You always relied on that kind of a guy. And he's obviously now being a broadcaster, he's a great personality as well. So that's the second world team. Let's go to the first one, which I think a lot of people are already going to expect. It's loaded with the talent that all Sharks basically talent. These are the best, probably top 5 Sharks of all time up on here. So what do you expect? You're obviously going to see these guys. So what more can I say? Patrick Marleau, first All-Star team, obviously. Most games played for the Sharks. He's got all the records for the Sharks basically, except for some that Thornton has, who's we're going to talk about next. Marleau's played for many World Cup, many Team Canada teams. 2010, 2014, 2016 World Cup. He's been in the Olympics for those 2010, 2014. Incredible player, obviously, during his prime. You could say that he's had some weird, inconsistent years. Sometimes he'll score 37 goals and he'd score 30 or 28 goals, and then he'd go back up and down again. But overall, all around, amazing Shark. Great work ethic and well-deserved to be on this list. And then Joe Thornton. What else is more to say about him? Best Shark ever, probably. He played for 2010 Olympics. He's played for 2014 Olympics. And this is, in this case, the 2016 World Cup of Hockey, which is what this is about. He's always been a solid player. He's never been like the top line guy for the Olympics, but he's always been a solid guy that ended up contributing very much for the team. Great guy. And now Joe Pavelski. So what else to say? Captain America. Everyone talks about he was the captain for the U.S. as well. Just an incredible player. Great leadership. One of those guys that he didn't join the because of his skill alone. He had to work for his skill. Like some guys have God-given talent like Joe Thornton who are just amazing and obviously work for it, but not as much as Pavelski. Pavelski earned everything. Like his tipping ability was because every day, every practice, he'd be spending an hour after practice working on his tipping. Like he is the king of work ethic. He's the king of drive and leadership. One of the best leaders, probably the best leader the Sharks have ever had, and one of the best players that we've had, obviously the Sharks ever had as well. He deserves to be on this list. Finally, on defense, you got Vlasic and Burns. So we're going to start with Vlasic, the best defensive defenseman the Sharks have ever had. In his prime, he was honestly just, the best in the world, easily. Like there was no one that was better than him between, I would say, 2012 and 2015. He was easily the best shutdown defenseman in the world. I still remember, like, when I noticed that he was actually, like, standing out was, like, 2012. Patrick Kane was coming on the wing as fast as he could. And this is the prime Patrick Kane. And he was coming down the wing as fast as he could, driving to the net, and Vlasic was keeping up with him, boxing him out, skating backwards. Like, that's when I was like, okay, this guy, he's the real deal. Because he was able to skate as fast as frickin' Patrick Kane and hold him off from a scoring opportunity. And it's just something that you don't really get to see. Like, some defensemen will have to turn around and kind of put their stick in the way. But no, Vlasic held his ground, had strength while holding Patrick Kane off from getting a good scoring opportunity. Like, that's when I was like, okay, this guy is the real freaking deal. And lo and behold, he was added to Team Canada for the Olympics in 2014, and the world got to see what he was capable of. And then again in 2016. So Marc-Edouard Vlasic, one of my favorite Sharks of all time. I love defense. I love the way he played, and he deserves to be on this list. And finally, Brent Burns. So the big lovable Wookiee, everyone loved him as the Shark. He was a great guy for Team Canada as well. He's not a great puck mover per se, but he was great at driving the puck up because no one could just move this moose of a man from getting the puck. And he had a great wrist shot, snapshot, so much power to it, so sneaky. He could tip it off your stick. He could try and get it on net. He could do whatever he wanted. Unmovable man. He was just an incredible player for Team Canada. So that is my first all-world team, and yeah, that's what I think about that. So now let's get on to the trades. All right, so I'm going to talk about the guys that are probably going to be shipped out or potential to be shipped out this season for the Sharks, and just some things you might be able to get for them. Obviously, we don't have guys that are capable anymore. I think Granlund was the biggest get for the Sharks in terms of getting that first-round pick. I don't think the Sharks are going to acquire anything more than maybe a mid-round pick for some of these guys, or they're just really good packages to add if the Sharks are looking to get these potential other guys that are looking on the trade block from other teams. So that's something to look to. But right now, we're going to start with Jan Ruda. He is a UFA after this season. Unfortunately, the Sharks don't have any more salary cap retention slots because Ruda would be a pretty decent, 6'7" guy for any cup contender. He's not as good as he used to be anymore. Obviously, he makes a lot of mistakes for the Sharks. You can see. So he's just a kind of guy that if someone's hurt, he's just a good body to have. Obviously for the Sharks, he's kind of our 6 guy right now. Sometimes he's the 4 guy, but the Sharks could use to get rid of him. He's a UFA after this season, so the Sharks are definitely not going to re-sign him. He might actually not even be playing for the NHL anymore unless he takes a really, really low salary. So I want to start with him. The reason that he is maybe an attractive option for some teams is that he's a right-handed defenseman, and those guys are gold in this league. So he's just a useful guy again to have just on that right side. A lot of teams like to have that balance between the left stick guy and the right-hand stick guy. So he's potentially someone to move, and I wouldn't see much more like a 5th or a 6th pick or something like that, or if he's packaged with somebody else. So that's Jan Ruda. Another guy that's probably not going to get anything great is Klim Kostin. Tough guy, great fighter. He's only had one fight this season against it was Utah. He ended up destroying the other guy, but yeah, $2 million. Unfortunately, the Shark can't retain anything with this either. He'll be an RFA, so that's kind of the attractive thing about him is that he's a tough guy. He's good to make your team. He'll stand up for the big player, the star players. So he's a good guy to have. Only 25 years old. Maybe the Sharks might be better to keep him. He's actually had some brilliant flashes in his game. Like they had that one goal that was really sweet this year. He's that guy that obviously stands up for you, but he's not a big guy, but he's got a big heart, and that might be something that's attractive to other teams. Again, you're not going to get much for him. Maybe Greer might be better off to keep him and just sign him at a low cap hit just to have him as a depth guy. Next year, we'll have to see who's going to actually be called up from the Barracuda. Maybe he's going to be kind of edged out anyway. Or even the Sharks could just trade him. Well, he's RFA, so I guess they can't trade him and get him back. But he's he's just a type of guy that might get maybe a late round pick for him. Who knows? He's a potential guy too. Now we're getting more and more likely guys who may be traded because they're more attractive option. Now Nico Sturm is another good one. He's been a solid Shark. In my opinion, it's better if the Sharks keep him. He's just a good number 4 center. I think the Sharks should re-sign him, but he is a potential guy that could be traded. You might be able to get a decent highest draft pick, maybe a 3rd or a 4th for him. What makes him so special is his face-off percentage. He's 63.7% on the face-offs right now, which is incredible. And if that's like your depth guy or your penalty killing guy, you're going to be solid as a contender. He's been a great player for the Sharks so far. In my opinion, it's best for the Sharks to keep him. But, and you never know, because the Sharks are looking to maybe build up to what's going to happen. They could end up getting rid of him, but if he gets a little bit of a raise for the Sharks, $2.5 million, 2 years, whatever it is, I think he'd be an attractive guy to keep for the Sharks. But he is going to be a UFA, so there's no control. He could just leave after the season. You might be better off just trading him for something because he's probably going to want to play for a contender anyway next year. Because there are going to be people that are going to be interested in a guy like this, who's again, solid number 4 center. Nico Sturm would be a great addition for any team in the NHL right now. Another guy that people have actually been calling about, we've heard rumors that he might be on the out, is Luke Kunin. Now, he's only making $2.75 million. He's 27 years old. He's a solid, maybe like third line winger kind of a guy. He's got a lot of grit, a lot of heart. He's had some games that were really nice. He scores a lot of goals, which is surprising for a guy who's like a depth dude. He's just a kind of another guy that for a contender, you slide him in on the 4th line, 3rd line, and if you are desperate, you can put him on the 2nd line wing if someone's injured. So we've seen how versatile he can be. He's played on the 1st line for the Sharks, who obviously aren't very deep, but this is the type of guy that the Sharks, any team could be interested in. The Leafs are one of the people I've heard because they need some kind of a 3rd line option. He is a potential center. He's not the best at his center position, but he is capable of doing it. He's been great though. So Luke Kunin for the Sharks, if they get rid of him, maybe you can probably see another 3rd, 4th round pick maybe. But he's a perfect kind of a guy you could package with a prospect for one of the guys that we're looking at for the Sharks to acquire. He's the perfect type of guy to do that. He's already has experience in the playoffs. He's played a couple of playoff seasons with the Nashville Predators when they were good. And so he's not that he has experience. He's not like going to be green in terms of that stuff. He's not going to shy away, and you know what he's capable of. So he's the type of guy that the Sharks could probably ship this year, and we'll probably see what happens. Because if he's UFA, he's not going to come back, I don't think. And finally, this is probably the last in terms of the skaters. Mario Ferraro has been in the rumors. I'm actually working on a video now on YouTube. I'm going to talk about why we should part ways with Ferraro. He's a great guy, great personality in the room. He's going to light up any room and make it that much better for any team, whoever he joins. Number 1, so that's on-ice personality. He's going to be a gem wherever he goes. The players are going to like him. The fans are going to love him. He also has, there's some control over him. So after this year, there's another year left on his contract at $3.25 million. Not too much with the cap going up. And he's a solid defenseman, top 4 guy, maybe top 6 guy in a contender. He blocks shots. He has a lot of heart. He's a great puck mover. He's not like elite or anything like that, but he's solid all around. Like he's not an pure offensive defenseman, but he's capable of putting some stuff up. 5 goals in the season for a defenseman is nothing to shake at. Like it's pretty good. He's the most important thing. Obviously, he's got 81 block shots this season. Kind of low compared to as average. It's a little bit down. I don't blame him. You can block shots for a basement team and risk your body when you're not really gonna make the playoffs. But he's the type of guy during the playoffs. He's gonna be going all out, all heart. He's gonna be fearless and just a complete warrior on the ice. So Mario Ferraro would be a great addition. I think the Sharks could get a second round pick, maybe even a first round pick, depending how desperate teams are, especially when you get near the deadline. A lot of teams now are making trades before the deadline, so those last minute trades could be like a GM maybe panicking and maybe giving a first round pick for him. Or again, you could package him with a prospect for a potential guy that we're about to talk about that the Sharks could look at to kind of beef up their own defense. The reason I want to trade Ferraro now, he is something that would really hurt the locker room, especially this season. Everyone loves him, but I think that it's for his sake. Again, I'm going to make this video on YouTube that's going to explain more, but I think Ferraro deserves. He's been such a good warrior for the Sharks for so many years. And I know he's even saying he wants to stay and see this rebuild through, but by the time the Sharks are even a good team, he'll be in his early 30s, right? So like when they're actually really contending for cups, I think the Sharks are still far away from that. And Ferraro could see that through, but I think if he get traded now, he could go to a contender, show what he's worth, and the most important thing, he's going to get paid. I think he deserves a good payday. He might get $5-6 million if he has a chance to show him what he's capable of on another team. I think he's that good of a player. So if he stays as a Shark, the Sharks aren't going to pay him that much because he hasn't really proven himself with the team that they have, but I think it's the team in front of him more than anything. So I think that Ferraro would be best to leave, and for the Sharks, they can get something good for him because of the control, the value of his contract being there for another year, and just the kind of guy he is. A lot of teams would love to have that guy in the locker room. So Mario Ferraro being a solid choice here. So the next one we're going to talk the goaltenders. This one's a little bit of a different one. It's not because of who's good and who's not. It's more that the Sharks are capable of maybe getting something for somebody. So the Sharks have been trying to poach Georgiev, and I'm going to show Vanecek as well because they're kind of interchangeable, really. Their stats are relatively the same, and I think one of these two guys is going to get shipped regardless. The thing is, are they good enough? Our team's going to be calling for these guys. That's the thing. I don't really see it so much. You go look at Alexander Georgiev. He's got $2.94 million average cap. He's going to be a UFA after this year, so at least the teams don't have to worry about him afterwards. He's probably a good option if a team's really weak on goaltending. They need that depth. Georgiev is never really panned out. When he played for the New York Rangers as a backup behind Lundqvist, everyone thought he was going to be like this stud star that's being held back. Maybe he was. Maybe he wasn't developed well, didn't play enough games. But he's just not that guy. The Sharks are bad. The defense is bad. You can't blame him too much. He's made some okay saves, but he's also made some really terrible, let some really bad goals in as well. 4.01 goals against average, .875 save percentage. Only 3 wins this season, 9 losses for the Sharks. So, I don't know. He's not going to be an attractive option. I don't think the Sharks are going to get much for him. But he's a potential guy, same as Vitek Vanecek. His cap hit is a little bit higher, $3.4 million. And then he's going to be UFA as well, 29 years old as well. He has the same goals against average as Georgiev, which is kind of funny. And close to the same save percentage, 8.878. 3 wins, 9 losses, same thing. He's I think the Sharks, when he came back for the Sharks from injury, the Sharks were really trying to play him a lot because they really wanted to showcase him, get him games in to maybe try and ship him out. Unfortunately, these guys aren't attractive options. The Sharks would love to try and get something for them. They might just have to ride these guys out because I don't think the Sharks should be bringing up Askarov for the rest of the season. I think the Barracuda really need as much power as they can to make the playoffs right now. They're kind of floating in that position where they could miss the playoffs. So bringing Askarov up will only hurt the Barracuda's chances of making it. I think the Sharks need to have 2 veteran goaltenders on their list. So I think we should keep them both. Unless the Sharks do trade somebody, get some kind of a UFA back, maybe a worse goalie that the other team has, but I can't really see any team in the NHL that's going to be calling Greer up to try and get these guys here. So those are pretty much the potential Sharks that could be shipped out this trade deadline. We'll have to see what Greer does. So far, I've been very impressed with what he does and what Greer's done with the trades. And it seems to always be when it happens, you always feel underwhelmed when the trade happens that day. Even that whole rest of the year, you're like, why did he trade that guy? But then Greer always has something up his sleeve. Maybe that trade that they acquired back, he can trade it for something else. For example, like Askarov, we traded Hurdle to the Vegas Golden Knights, got that first round pick, and then Greer shipped that off for Askarov. So whatever happens now, I'm at the point where I'm patient with what Greer does. I'm not going to scratch my head with whoever he gets out and whatever he gets back because he always has something up his sleeve. And even like Zetterlund, he was kind of underwhelming from the Meyer trade. He was kind of like the golden piece from that trade for Timo Meyer. And it was kind of like, why is he going to be good? And now Zetterlund's like our power forward guy. He's such a solid guy. He's really growing into himself, and it ended up being a really good trade for the Sharks. So whoever the Sharks get, I'm going to trust in Greer. He's been great so far. So yeah, I'm going to really see what happens with that. But now we're going to go to potential guys the Sharks could get. And don't freak out, because I know this is the first thing people are saying, whoa, why is this the first option? I want to get this one out of the way first. The Sharks need size. That's our biggest problem. They're getting bullied around all the time. They need to get big on defense. And you can't get big on defense without skill. You don't want those lumbering guys who can barely move the puck. I know Seth Jones is stupidly overpaid. He still has a huge long time in his contract, and he's also has an anchor. So he might not even want to play for the Sharks. But he might also want to play for the Sharks to have a new change of scenery, because he's not really fitting well in Chicago. There might be some excitement for him, the idea that he's going to see some young talent to play with. Obviously, he has that with Chicago, but the Sharks also have that same attractive option. Like, you're looking at a Chicago team with Bedard and some other great young players, or Macklin Celebrini, Will Smith, and all these other guys too. So to him, might be just like interchangeable. Like, I could go either way, and if the Sharks are willing to get him, it's not a bad thing. He's huge. He's got 26 points in 38 games, which is pretty solid for a defenseman. It's not solid for $9.5 million cap, but with the cap going up, Celebrini and Will Smith aren't going to get paid for another 3 years. They could afford to have this kind of an anchor of a contract. And maybe Chicago might be able to retain some salary for him. And I don't think that Chicago will be able to get anything crazy back. We're not giving away the farm for Seth Jones because it's kind of an unattractive option. So it's a potential guy. He's got size. He uses his size fairly a bit. And he's a pretty decent puck mover. Like, I think it's just because of that contract, he's really seen as like a crappy player. He's not bad. It's just that he's not really playing up to that contract level. I think he's a good addition, and the Sharks wouldn't have to pay too much to get this kind of a guy. And it's just that kind of thing that the Sharks need right now. They need to build out their defense. They're really thin on just skill and size. They have like Liljegren, but he's getting pushed around. Jack Thompson will make it up next year. But again, he's not a big guy. Shakir McMadulan, great talented guy, but he's not a physical dude. He's not going to be able to lay down the hits that Seth Jones would potentially be able to do. So not a bad idea, I don't think, for the Sharks. And the Sharks wouldn't have to give up too much to get him. So I think he's a potential guy to think about. Another guy that's kind of on the trade block is Zach Jones. He's a young guy, not size, but he's got some skill. He's got a little potential. Only $812,000 average annual value in his salary. He's also an RFA, so there's control there. He's got 8 points in 28 games. And the New York Rangers have given him permission to talk because of how deep the Rangers are. He's been kind of shipped up and down watching in the press boxes. So the Rangers are allowing him to kind of go and explore his options. The Sharks could get something for him, and he's not going to be, again, maybe sell something small. Maybe you can give Ferrero for him, or even like a guy like Sturm, some depth guy, and then a pick for someone like Zach Jones. It's a potential option for the Sharks, not a terrible thing. Another guy for size, K'Andre Miller. He's also on the block. $3.8 million, and then he comes in RFA, so Sharks will still have control over him. He's only 25 years old. He honestly is perfect for the Sharks. He's like, pretty much has a lot more grit than Seth Jones would have. Maybe not as skilled as Seth Jones, but he's a big dude. He's not afraid to lay the body. He's gritty. He's rough. And he can put some points in the net. You put the puck in the back of the net, you get some points for the team as well. I think this would be a great addition for the Sharks, and they should probably target him more than Zach Jones. Sorry. K'Andre Miller is a solid dude. I think that's something they should be looking at right there. Another one that's been talked about is Bowen Byram. I'm not a fan of this. I'm just pointing this up there because I've seen a lot of people talk about this. He's a 4th overall pick in 2019 from Colorado. He's got 29 points in 54 games. He's not terrible. He could have, like, his ceiling is still pretty high. He's only 23 years old, so there's a potential that he could make it to that next level. And Buffalo was really hoping to have that. And obviously they have Owen Power, they have Dahlin. So this guy is kind of like pushed out to the bottom, and they're all left-handed shots. So the problem is that where are you going to put Byram, right? He needs to have more minutes to be good. The Sharks could get him. He's a skilled guy, but I just don't think he's the kind of guy the Sharks need right now. I think the Sharks need more size than anything else. And honestly, for the Sharks would have to get for him because the Buffalo is looking to get a lot. I just don't think that he's the type of guy that the Sharks should go for. I think there's just better options there, but a lot of people are really pushing for this guy. We'll have to see. And this is the big one. So this one I don't think is going to happen at all because the Islanders right now are looking at a playoff spot, and they would be bad to not re-sign this guy. Noah Dobson is an offensive stud. He's an all-around good defenseman. Another guy with size the Sharks could use. I would be all for this unless the Sharks have to overpay for him. But he is the type of guy that, the Sharks need. But I just don't see the Islanders giving him up because the Islanders are now in that playoff spot. They need to show their fans that they're trying to make the playoffs. I don't see him staying. To be honest, I don't see him leaving. Sorry, I think that he's going to stay with the Islanders. They'll figure out a way to re-sign him, but he would be a really attractive option, especially being an RFA. I think the Sharks have to overpay to get him, and I just don't think it would be worth it at all. They would want a really skilled forward for him, I would think. And this one I've heard across the pipes as well is that Brandon Carlo is on the block. Another guy with size. Now this I wouldn't mind. He's a $4.1 million cap. Again, the Sharks with so much cap space and with not having to pay these young studs for another 3 years at least, he's a solid option. 28 years old. He's a good size guy, and I believe he's a right-handed shot, so he'd be a fit right in the right side where we need him. He'd be great with Wallman. That would be a really tough duo to deal with as the number one pairing. At least the Sharks might be losing games, but they're not going to make it easy on the other teams. This is the kind of guy that the Sharks could probably look at as well. Love the size, love his grit, and Boston's trying to shake things up, so there's potential that the Sharks could give something that Boston might want someone young, but it wouldn't be like too much because again that bulk anchor of a cap, and the Boston's a little bit desperate to get rid of him because of that giant cap, and they're pretty much stacked on defense right now. So, but the fact that Carlo's available is something the Sharks should definitely be looking at. Another one I heard from the pipe, Dylan Cozens. He's a potential that I guess Buffalo's trying to shake things up because they keep they've been mediocre for over 13 years now, 14 years. And they just keep sticking with the same kind of guys. So I guess they're trying to shake things up a bit. He's a potential option. He's got 27 points in 54 games, not living up to that $7.1 million contract. He would solve the Sharks' center problem right off the bat. You have Celebrini and Cozens for the next 4 years at least. You're going to get good. And Will Smith, you can kind of interchange him as a third-line center and then put him on the wing as well because he's been thriving as a winger right now. When we kept Will Smith in the beginning of the season as a center, starting off his career, didn't end up being very good for him, I think. So keeping him on wing it'd be easier to keep him on them if we had to Dylan Cozens. So I think that he would be an attractive option, but I don't think he's going to be a type of guy that's going to be cheap. I think the Sharks have to give up the farm for him. Someone like a Bistad or even like, I don't even know who, someone who's really young and capable and that next level that's about to knock on the door. I don't know anyone on the roster that the Sharks would probably give up. I wouldn't want to give up Zetterlund or Smith or Celebrini. Those are the guys you need to keep. Jack Thompson as well. The Sharks need to keep him. So who are you going to give for him? That's the question. Probably a first-round pick and something like that. The Sharks do have another first-round pick they could use for someone like Dylan Cozens. So that's a potential right there, and that would solve a lot of the center depth that the Sharks have right now. This is another one too, Simon Nemec. So there's a rumor that he's actually unhappy as well, just like Zach from the New York Rangers. He's not happy. He's been sent down a lot. He's been Utica Comets this year. He's got 23 points in 34 games. New Jersey Devils only has 1 point in 11 games. And yeah, he's just kind of disgruntled there. So New Jersey might be able to get rid of him. Again, the Sharks will have to pay for this kind of a guy because he has a lot of potential. He's got 2 more years, then he's an RFA. So he's got some term already set there. I think the Sharks could potentially get him. There's nothing really in the rumor that the Sharks are in on him. But there was talks, I heard, that when the Sharks traded Meyer, they wanted some guy like this. But yeah, obviously it didn't happen because he was just like a stud at the time. But that's a potential guy that the Sharks could be looking at right there. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think that's kind of a pipe dream for this one, but it'd be kind of cool. And that's it for the Sharks. Probably have to need the trade deadline here. So the Sharks obviously have a lot of options they're looking for. They need to unload some UFAs and get some good some good draft picks, and maybe some guys you could probably piece together in a trade for some of the guys I just talked about. I think out of all the guys, the Sharks should definitely target. Number one would probably be K-Andre Miller, or I know it's crazy, but Seth Jones. I think these two guys are the type of guys the Sharks need that would really, really add some bite to the Sharks. In terms of getting some kind of skill, Bowen Byram is an option. I worry about his ceiling. I don't think he's going to hit that ceiling. I know he's not really making that much money, but if he's an RFA after this summer, like, what are the Sharks going to have to pay him? Like, is he going to be worth another $3.85 million? Is he going to get a raise? That's the thing. And for a guy that's still unproven as like a stud, I just don't see him being like a great option. But who knows? You have to let me know what you guys think. That's going to be it for the Teal Tear Down Hockey Podcast, episode 16. I appreciate you, wherever you are, whatever you're listening from. I just appreciate you listening with me today and watching, and just let me know what you think. Leave a comment below on Spotify or on YouTube, wherever you're watching or listening. Let me know what you think the Sharks should do this trade deadline, and also what you thought of the Four Nations tournament so far, because it's been a crazy fun tournament. So, yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you again next week.